And acknowledge that the city of Winkler is located on Treaty 1 land, the home of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties that have been made on these territories and acknowledge that there have been harms and mistakes in the past, but we dedicate ourselves to a future based on respect of all peoples, including Indigenous communities, in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration, moving forward to a harmonious, prosperous future together. Be it resolved that the agenda for the regular council meeting of February 11th, 2025 be adopted. Mover?
Andrew?
Second. Marvin. For those people who are watching and even the people in chambers, two of our councillors are not able to join us today, or three are not able to join us, but two are calling in. Don Friesen and Marvin Plett are on, as you can see on the screens, checking in as best they can. I will ask Don and Marvin both if you would verbally either vote yea or nay when we come to votes.
Yep.
Do we have any additions or changes to the agenda?
Nope.
All in favor?
Yay.
Carried. And be it resolved that the minutes of the regular council meeting of January 28th, 2025 be adopted. Mover?
Andrew?
Second.
Don Friesen.
Any comments on those minutes?
Nope.
All in favor?
Yay.
Carried. You will see an item of correspondence, climate forecast provided by the province of Manitoba, specifically for the city of Winkler. A lot of information there. At this point in time, it is exactly that. It's information. We'll take it, we'll take a look at that and review it and go from there. Continuing then to finance, be it resolved that accounts payable in the amount of $755,096.35 as approved by the Finance Committee be approved for payment. Mover?
Andrew?
Second.
Don.
As always, your check register is attached. You have an opportunity to look through it. Did you find anything there that you had questions on?
No, sir. Nope.
All in favor?
Yay. Yay.
And that is carried. Moving forward then to a pretty exciting announcement here. Be it resolved that the City of Winkler approves a grant totaling $52,000 and a bridge financing loan of $24,000 for the Heritage Society to support the renovation at the Winkler Arts and Culture Building as they move into there. Mover?
Andrew?
Second.
Michael?
Marvin, you just lost out to Michael on that one. Jody, do you want to help us, at least for the public here, a little bit of details in terms of what we're looking to do?
Sure. Winkler Heritage Society was given notice some time ago about their archive space at the Winkler Library, that they would be needing that space. And so they've been looking for a spot to be. They also had been given notice that their museum that's currently located in the mall was going to be used for other purposes, and they would have to find a different spot for that. So where we're at now is that they're going to be doing a renovation at the back of the building where Winkler Arts and Culture is right now. So that's a City of Winkler owned building that is being leased by Winkler Arts and Culture. They have been considering just, they were towards the end of their 10-year lease. So the idea is to end that one early, enter into a new one, and then enter into a lease agreement with Winkler Heritage Society as well. And they will share that building. And so that is, this first part is to actually just renovate one small part of the building so that the archives can be located there in a climate-controlled space. And then from there, Winkler Heritage Society will embark on some fundraising to renovate the rest of the space.
Excellent.
It's exciting.
I think it is. It's really good that we have that space that was underutilized. Now we get to help a second organization be in a space that hopefully will meet their needs for quite a few years and allow us to also support a group that has really been looking for a solution. No further comments? All in favor?
Yay. Yay.
Carried. That takes us to our tax sale resolution, and that is, of course, something we do annually for those taxes that are outstanding too far back, meaning at this point in time, any properties that are outstanding 2023 and beyond. At this point in time, which is not surprising for this time of year, we have a significant number of them outstanding. Letters have now gone out to remind those people that those taxes remain payable and that they need to come in. But we do need to, in order to get to a final solution, if in fact we need to, we do need to put this resolution on the floor. I will put it on the floor and open discussion after that if we could. Be it resolved that the designated year for which properties in arrears be offered for sale by auction be 2024, meaning all properties and outstanding taxes from the year 2023 or prior. And be it further resolved that in accordance with section 363(1) of the Municipal Act, costs shall be the actual costs incurred by the municipality for each parcel listed for the tax sale. And be it further resolved that the tax sale be held October 29th, 2025 at 2 p.m. at the City of Winkler Council Chambers. Mover.
Andrew?
Second.
Peter.
Marvin.
Once again, Marvin, you were just barely on the outside looking in.
Internet's too slow.
Additional comments or thoughts, gentlemen?
Hopefully you get them all resolved by then.
We're very, very happy to say that I don't know that we've had a tax sale in the last 20 years.
Not to my knowledge.
These situations generally, and again, at this point in time, as of today, I believe we have 48 still outstanding. Those have already come down significantly in the last week or so as letters went out. They will continue to do so, and hopefully each one of these are able to find a resolution of a kind that they can pay that so we don't have to be there. No further comments? All in favor?
Yay. Yay.
Carried. That takes us to a borrowing resolution. Be it resolved that the City of Winkler may borrow from the credit union by way of a line of credit agreement the sum of $10 million, together with interest as set out in the terms and conditions in the line of credit agreement. The city pledges and assigns as a first charge to the credit union all taxes levied or to be levied by the city for the present year as security for the line of credit and interest thereon. The City of Winkler undertakes to deposit all taxes to be collected by it with the credit union as security for repayment by the credit union, but the credit union will not be restricted to the taxes for repayment, will not be required to wait for collection of the taxes before it is repaid, nor will it be required to see what the taxes are deposited or applied. The mayor and city manager are authorized to execute under seal on behalf of the municipality all documents necessary to give effect to the foregoing. Mover.
Andrew?
Second.
Don.
This too, by way of explanation, is an annual line of credit that we have. To the best of my knowledge, Jody, have we used this over the last number of years?
I'll defer to our Director of Corporate Services to answer that one.
And if he does, I'll ask him to come to the microphone to make sure that everybody is able to hear it.
The question is, have you used it? I would say,
We've used-
yes, we have used it. And especially now with the 3 large projects that we have on the go, this really helps us to bridge from January now till, since our taxes are due in August, to bridge those months in between.
Okay, excellent, thank you. Further questions of council? Okay, all in favor?
Yay. Yay.
Thank you. That is carried. Be it resolved that the fire reports for 2024 and January 2025 be received for information. Mover.
Michael?
Second.
Peter.
Both are attached, the full year report for 2024 and the month of January 2025. Do you have any comments that you'd like to note?
I think it was another successful year with regards to the partnership with our neighbors there in the Artemis Stanley. They continued to work well with the fire department. Calls were, the report shows, down just a bit from the previous year, which is nice. And, yeah.
Thank you. I did note, though, with interest that January was quite cold and the numbers were way high.
Yeah, January's got a handful of furnace fires in the call log there, and
So good to see that we have members continue to come out even when it is quite cold so that we're able to deal with that. But it can't be any fun being out there even fighting a fire when it's like that. It was also good to see that we were, through mutual aid, also able to support Morden with the
Yes.
fire at their clubhouse. That was a really scary situation for them, and ultimately even for ourselves. Our equipment on site ended up freezing up towards the end because the ladder trucks were just simply not built for that level of cold for that long. Marvin, did you have a comment as well?
Well, I think the good news will be when we see the February report. I think the high volume of calls may well be maybe a little bit lower. Let's hope.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Yeah.
Yes.
Carried. Moving then to be it resolved that the Morden Stanley Winkler 2025 emergency plan be approved. Mover?
Marvin?
Second.
Peter.
Jody, is there anything here particular we need to be aware of, or is this strictly an updating of the plan?
Yeah, if I might.
I'd appreciate it.
You want to read all 150?
That's a long
pages?
No,
document.
no. But we did add a bit of a summary, and I'll just highlight that. Darren Drieger is our municipal emergency coordinator, was planning to be here tonight, was unexpectedly not able to make it, so his regrets for not being here. In the summary, you can see some of the things that Darren highlighted is a bit of a change in branding. They've changed the name. There was a little bit of a conflict, I guess, with the CERC acronym that we had. So it's now called the Morden Stanley Winkler Emergency Management. And they've done some little bit of branding change to go along with that. And then you'll see, like, there also in the last year has been a bit of a change in the way they work with volunteers. We've long relied on a group of volunteers to really help run that program. But this last year saw a bit of a change away from that and going more towards different organizations that have consistently contributed when there are emergencies. And that does include some religious groups and others that offer support when needed in emergencies. And so they've found it advantageous to kind of just keep working with those partnerships. And so while they're highly appreciative of those volunteers over many years, they made the decision to work on these partnerships. So a bit of a pivot there. And just some next steps that they'll be working then to formalize some of those relationships with community groups and organizations. And they're also planning a public outreach campaign with some updated messaging just to help better educate residents on emergency planning and municipal response to emergencies. And then the rest of it, yeah, there is a little bit of a reformatted report or emergency plan. And it's not a lot of changes, mostly just different formatting. We are making efforts also to have, in particular, some on council, especially the head of council, to kind of be able to be invited to some of the training sessions, because there is a fair bit of responsibility on council in those emergency situations, especially in the event that we have to declare a state of local emergency.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions?
Marvin here.
please.
I did actually read all 158 pages. And I'm very impressed with the amount of work and the depth and breadth of work that they've gone into and working on the various aspects. And yeah, so I think kudos to the people that have worked on it. It's a really good document. And you're right, City Manager Fenner, that there is some onus on council in the event that something happens. And so for us to, maybe it would be a good idea sometime to just kind of highlight some of the things that directly affect council in terms of something like that. So,
Indeed.
thanks.
Thank you, Marvin. Further comments? All in favor?
Yay.
Yes.
Carried. That takes us to Transportation and Utilities. Be it resolved that the following amendments be made to Schedule A and D of the Traffic and Parking Bylaw number 2283-22. Mover.
Marvin?
Second,
Michael?
Michael. If I read that correctly, there is one amendment to each Schedule A and D. Schedule D would be the three-way stop that we've approved recently for Pembina Avenue and 15th Street. And Schedule A was the crosswalk that's installed at Pembina and 3rd.
You nailed it.
Beautiful. Comments, council?
All good?
All in favor?
Yes.
Yay.
Carried. Moves us to health and welfare. Be it resolved that the Winkler and District Healthcare Board meeting minutes for the December 16th, 2024 meeting be received for information. Mover?
Marvin?
Second.
Don?
Do either of you have anything to add to the minutes to what we see, or anything that you believe we need additional thoughts on?
Well, we are working on the next level since the purchase of the building in terms of how to best move forward with renovations, with making more room for physician spots and so on. That's going to be ongoing for the next quite a bit of time. It's also, if you look at the last couple of points, points 8 and 9, it's very good to partner with our surrounding agencies like Salem Home and Eden, and they're a vital part of what the healthcare board is doing.
Thank you, Marvin. You've got the minutes, council. Any questions that you have? All in favor?
Yay.
Carried. That takes us into planning. Multi-use pathways resolution, there's a couple of whereases that are important to note. Obviously, we have a really good and expanding network of multi-use pathways, and we believe that they provide benefit to residents and visitors alike, and it's a good alternate method of transportation for work and recreation. Therefore, be it resolved that the City of Winkler Council support the Building Winkler Multi-Use Pathway System project, which will expand the Eastview pathway and renew the South Dyke pathway. Mover.
Don?
Second.
Peter?
Anything by way of explanation there?
Just that this is a federal grant with the Rural Transit Solutions Fund. And as always, we're hopeful that we'll get something here. Again, and it would cover 60% of the costs of those pathways.
And both of those pathways are already in our plan.
Correct.
So if we can get some support for it, that simply helps our budget.
Exactly.
Excellent. Comments from council?
Nope.
All in favor?
Yay.
Carried. Thank you very much. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2338-25 be given first reading. Mover.
Marvin?
Friesen?
Marvin got the move, Don got the second. This is fairly straightforward. It's a bylaw prepared to close a portion of Road 20W. This was currently separating our wastewater treatment lands and consolidate it with the adjacent two titles that are there as well. No physical road exists within this 100-foot space. However, the public road allowance that is there does contain a drain, which the city will be required to maintain. That strip of land is also used by city staff to access and maintain the lagoon cells. It's gated, ensuring no public access. Crown Lands does not allow the closure of Dominion lands under nearly all circumstances, because we need this to electrical service different areas of that area. We have received favorable feedback from the Crown Lands Real Estate Department February 5th. Given this unique context that these lands will continue to serve the public interest, following this first reading, Crown Lands has indicated they will circulate this to their staff for comment, but they're cautiously optimistic. We are cautiously optimistic that a formal response can be obtained within 30 days. That would normally take a year or longer, but because we're mid-development of that lagoon right now, this is a unique situation that we ran across as we were trying to do electrical service to the different areas of the lagoon. After we had a permit, we ran into a situation that caught everyone off guard. We've been working together with the province and Manitoba Hydro to resolve this. Jody, I'm not sure if there's anything additional that we should add to it, but ultimately, we were able to come to terms on a very creative solution that will allow this to move forward in a good way.
Yep. No, I think that covers it.
That's awesome.
So this is first reading. We circulate it afterwards and go from there. All in favor?
Yay.
Yay.
Carried. By way of background, this solution, had we not been able to find something, would have ended up costing the city of Winkler and the province of Manitoba, who's our partner in it, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the fact that we were able to do this and that our staff had the patience to walk this out through a fairly difficult conversation, thank you very much. Takes us to community services. Be it resolved that the Discover Nature Sanctuary minutes for the November 26th, 2024 meeting be received for information. Mover.
Peter.
Second.
Michael?
Any comments on what we see there?
Lots of work being done there.
That is an organization that finds things to do.
And gets lots of visitors, which
It
is good.
certainly does. It certainly does.
Schools and stuff, it's very good.
All in favor?
Yay.
Yay.
Carried. Be it resolved that Councillor Ryan Hildebrandt be appointed on a one-year term as the City of Winkler representative for the South Central Regional Library Board. Mover.
Marvin.
Second.
Sure, I'll help them.
Andrew. Any comments? This will teach Ryan not to go on holidays because he'll get appointed to committees when he goes. Just kidding. I had a good conversation with Councillor Hildebrandt. He's excited to start serving on different committees. There is a more formal slate of his appointments that will come up, I believe, Jody, at the next meeting.
That's right.
But this was something that we needed to get done fairly quickly, as some of these outside committees have meetings that need to happen, and our voice needs to be at that table. All in favor?
Yay.
Yay.
Carried. Be it resolved that the Winkler Arts and Culture Report for January 2025 be received for information. Mover?
Don.
Second.
Michael?
Comments from either of you gentlemen?
Well, I think they're excited about this new, maybe call it a marriage with the Heritage Society. And yeah, so they're looking forward to work on that and looking for a busy 2025. Got lots of things planned already, which is exciting to see for them.
Excellent. Questions?
You
All in
finished
favor?
You finished in the black. Nice work, Don.
Absolutely. Good job.
Yeah, hey, you like that, eh?
Yay.
Much better than the other color. All in favor?
Yay.
Carried.
Yay.
Be it resolved that the Central Manitoba Tourism Report for December 2024 and January 2025 be received for information. Mover?
Michael?
Second.
Peter.
Any comments on what we see?
No, really, the report's just some kind of year-end housekeeping from the manager there, and they're moving onward and upward.
She's certainly working very hard at it. It's good to
She
see.
is.
All in favor?
Yay.
Carried. Nothing in personnel today. That takes us to delegations and hearings. And be it resolved that this regular meeting of council recess for the purpose of holding public hearings. Mover?
Andrew?
Second.
Michael?
All in favor?
Yay.
Carried. The first presenter would be a delegation from the Manitoba Hotel Association. I will let you have the podium. I'll ask you to introduce yourself and please make your presentation.
Perfect. There you go. A little shorter, sorry, but good evening, Mayor and Council. For those I haven't met yet, my name is Michael Juice, and I'm the President and CEO of the Manitoba Hotel Association. Since 1927, the MHA has been the voice of the hospitality industry in the province of Manitoba. Membership in our association is voluntary, but I'm proud to say we currently have over 260 hotel members all across this great province, including 3 in Winkler that collectively represent over 200 hotel guest rooms. And of course, here today to talk about the proposed accommodation tax bylaw, which is of course very important to our sector and our members. So collectively, these members in Winkler employ dozens of individuals. As hotels are where careers grow, they are also significant contributors to the municipal tax base.
Yes.
Besides the positive economic impact of hotels, there's the positive social impacts. From weddings to graduations, hotels are where we gather for the happy moments in our lives, and that's where memories are made. They're where communities connect and where families play. Hotels are on the front lines of tourism and economic development efforts. Tourism serves as the tip of the economic development spear, it is often said. Simply put, hotels help make it happen. Also, global data shows that only about 30% of visitor spending is on the accommodation itself. The rest goes to diversified areas such as retail, restaurants, transportation, and entertainment, to name just a few. A visitor also spends twice as much as a local in a day, bringing new dollars into communities. A guest brings a lot to a community, and while they may stay at a hotel, they're likely spending more elsewhere. With that in mind, I think we're all aligned on that end goal of how do we increase visitation to Winkler.
Right.
Accommodation taxes are one potential tool, but in our history, we've seen too many cases where we see revenues siphoned off to other areas. I cannot stress enough this, that it is important that the sole purpose of accommodation taxes go towards putting more heads in beds. I don't need to remind anyone that we also live in a very uncertain time. If we do see 25% tariffs across the board in a few weeks, that'll no doubt lead to a large recession that'll negatively impact our sector and many others. Increasing taxes would raise costs when we were potentially headed for a severe economic slowdown. I would also like to stress to Council 3 additional points. Local families will also be impacted by this increase. Over 85% of all travelers and visitors in the province come from inside Manitoba, and they contribute the majority of spending as well. Local families enjoying staycations will pay more, and local businesses will pay more when they bring in people. That business travel has a huge economic impact, as a business traveler typically spends twice as much as a leisure guest. It's also important to consider that hotels themselves will be paying more by administering this tax. So apologies, my high school math teacher is probably screaming, but almost all transactions nowadays are made via credit card. At a 3% tax, that tax would work out to about $330 a room at $110 a night. With 3% in credit card fees, that works out to about 10 cents a room. Now, that may not seem like much, but when you add that up amongst the 200 plus rooms, assuming about 50% occupancy, which is where Winkler's been in the past bit, that works out to about $10 total in credit card fees. But you add that up, again, in a business that operates 365 days a year, we're looking at over $4,000 in just credit card fees that will come out of our members' bottom line just to administer the tax. So we strongly suggest some mechanism be put in place so that our members are at least made whole and not covering credit card fees if this tax does go forward. Hoteliers also need a say and a voice in how the monies raised will be spent. It is very encouraging to see new event acquisition, current event retention, enhancing economic development, and encouraging tourism as stated uses in the draft bylaw. Hoteliers need to be at the table. If the tax proceeds, a committee needs to be formed with local hotelier input, or else we're facing taxation without representation. Again, any revenue from the accommodation tax needs to be laser focused on that goal of how do we get more heads in beds. The property tax for Winkler hotels is assessed based on financial performance. Winkler directly benefits from more guests stay in Winkler hotels. On the other side of the coin though, if hotels struggle, tax assessments will likely go down, costing the city. at the end of the day, I think we're aligned on this end goal, and all revenue from the tax, again, needs to go solely towards incentivizing more paid overnight stays in Winnipeg. In closing, I'd like to thank you for your time, attention, and diligence, and continued dialogue on this matter.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And I would also like to thank you, as we've been trying to work on something along these lines over the last several years. I appreciate that you and the hoteliers have been at the table. We've had some conversations, and you've been able to influence where this heads in terms of a delay in implementation, also in a phased-in approach. And even your letter here this time saying, hey, what about the idea of the cost? We are in the midst of putting that rebate in with regard to credit card fees. It's a very good point that you make. We also, rather than putting it into general revenue, as most municipalities do, as you know, we very specifically put it towards those 4 targeted approaches, with the intention being exactly what you suggest: more heads in beds. Hopefully, as we continue to use some of these funds, specifically event retention, event growth, tourism, or economic growth, it will do exactly that. It will bring more people to our community, which will put more heads in your beds, which will help us to put on and provide bigger and more well-funded events. The other piece that we have, the taxation without representation, I would suggest that the representation is every 4 years. Each one of us is up for re-election. None of us have been appointed for life. So that piece will definitely be there already. Outside of that, though, we very strongly encourage both yourself and the local hoteliers to reach out to the city. It doesn't have to be council necessarily, but reach out to the city with ideas for events that could use some support that would help to put more heads in beds. Our 100% goal on this is, and you stated it very well, laser focused to make sure that in fact it does what it should do. We've, together with the hoteliers, and I agree, both yourself and the Hotel Association have been unanimous in their opposition to this, but you've been extremely respectful with key points that said, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? Have you thought of that? And that respectful dialogue has got us to what we believe today to be a very good approach to it, to phase in slowly, to give everybody an opportunity to get their feet underneath them, and for those dollars to go specifically to put heads in beds. So I very much appreciate your presentation here. I'll open it up if council has any question of Michael.
Don't think so.
I would give you, Michael, an opportunity for any closing thoughts if you have.
No, I just mentioned, thanks again for the opportunity. I think the committee component's really important of, some interplay again of, I think structuring that formula would be great. I know this morning I get to, sit on the City of Winnipeg committee that looks at the disbursement of the City of Winnipeg Special Event Fund. So there's myself, two members, from the City of Winnipeg, one from the Mayor's Office, another from the City Civil Service, one from Tourism Winnipeg, one from Economic Development Winnipeg. So I'd strongly encourage looking at that type of structure or model that, if the tax does go forward, that's in place to then oversee, and that committee looks at, event bids and upcoming opportunities for Winnipeg. So I'd strongly suggest, something similar be considered here as well for that too, to again, keep as I think that's our end goal at the end of the day.
Yep.
We're very aligned on that of,
Absolutely.
more visitation and more heads in beds.
Excellent.
Okay. Thank you.
Appreciate your presentation very much. Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Michael.
That will take us to our next group, the Tri-Lakes Development Group. I believe Cliff Greenfield is here to speak to this. I don't see Cliff, actually. Is there anyone else here specifically wishing to speak to this? Council has a very good presentation here, specifically in terms of the letter of support that the Tri-Lakes Group is looking for, specifically to continue to further water opportunities down the Pembina River, I think is the one where we're most interested in, but they're looking at some additional projects there. Jody or Marvin, are there any additional thoughts that we should touch on here?
I'll defer to Marvin.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I didn't receive any information, I don't think, unless it would have just been recently, that he wouldn't be able to, he indicated that he would be here. But in any event, he sent us a very good a bunch of information. I think but the river is important, water is important to us, and to be good stewards of the water is important for us. I think it's a small group of people from a number of municipalities that surround or are interested in the water of the Pembina River, and they are looking at basically two things: the quality of the water in the Tri Lakes, Pelican, Swan, and Rock Lake, and as well as the amount of water in there. So they have done a lot of work. I thank council for having had me be able to attend the meetings, participate in the meetings that we've had. We're working diligently on trying to find ways to improve the lakes. And so basically they are looking at this point to have a study done. The province is asked that the municipalities, the members, have a resolution supporting that request. And they're looking at improving the quality of the water. And some of that would be also by raising the levels of the lake to historic low levels, like the minimum level to historic low levels. And so there'd be deeper water throughout the low periods. That would also allow for better fish survival and healthier water in the lake. So I think that's some of the things that Cliff Winkler would say. He has been with the province for many years, worked with this committee for a long time on it, and would certainly is supportive of this as well.
Thank you, Marvin. One other piece of context, of course, Marvin alluded to, we've been involved and supportive of this group for quite a few years. I believe it was about 10 years ago when we last put a motion forward of support, and at that time, we also put a $5,000 contribution towards it because we believe very much that any water conversation in southern Manitoba should involve the city of Winkler, recognizing also that we are by some significant margin the largest municipality in southern Manitoba. It behooves us to be good stewards and a good neighbor, and as much as we can to be sort of supportive of this. Today, there is only moral support requested. And in fact, I'll read the resolution as it would be to see if in fact we have any concern with it. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council of the City of Winkler request the Department of Manitoba Transportation and Infrastructure to analyze the impacts of raising the normal operating level on Swan Lake and changes to flood frequency in Rock Lake before hydrologic impact study begins. Mover.
Andrew?
Second.
Marvin?
Marvin got that one. Again, today it's moral support. Hopefully they're able to continue to move this conversation forward that is going to provide some more water security for southern Manitoba and in fact improve the water quality of the Pembina River, which is vitally important to a number of users and potential users as we continue to go. Any additional thoughts or comments or questions? All in favor?
Yay.
Carried.
For this next one, I'd like to excuse myself. There's a perceived conflict of interest.
Okay. We will have the minutes show that Peter Frey stepped out for this. So we'll have a public hearing for variance application number VA 2025-002-114 Cottonwood Drive. Mover. Oop, no, way early, Henry. Jody, I'll turn it over to you.
Very good. As always with our public hearings, if you're here to speak on the matter, then after I've introduced it, the chair will invite comments from those for or opposed. And we would ask, because we stream all our meetings, that you'd come up to the mic and state your name so that everyone can be able to fully participate. So this first one is variance 2025-002. Applicant is listed as Isaac Fraze, owners Ike Fraze and Karen Fraze. Location is 114 Cottonwood Drive. The request here is to reduce the required side yard from 5 feet to 2 feet. And the purpose is in order to construct an addition to an existing garage in the R1 zone. We have no objections to this application. And just a further note from MSTW indicating that with appropriate fire guarding, the building would comply with code at the 2-foot setback. And the owners indicated their willingness to do what was needed for it to meet code and to get the variance.
Okay, thank you. Is Isaac here this evening? Wondering if you'd like to come to the microphone and give us your thoughts?
Isaac Fraze, said owner and applicant of the variance. Not much more to add than what he said.
Okay,
Hoping to make it as nice as I can. I've had an architect there. I've had 3 different carpenters there. I can't build what I want to build. I was going to have it more, give it more curb appeal, and I can't. I can't find a way to do it no matter what I spend. So
okay,
if I go ahead with it, it'll be as nice as I can make it. That's all I can say. It's,
That's
I
fair.
can't get better than that, so.
okay.
But I'll
Appreciate
say.
those comments. Any questions or comments from council? I don't see any, Isaac, thank you. Is there anyone here wishing to speak to this, either for or in opposition? I don't see anybody else here. Not seeing council with thoughts either. Be it resolved that public hearing for variance application number VA 2025-002 be closed. Mover,
Andrew?
second.
Michael?
Marvin,
Marvin, just a little late. Nice try, though.
that's okay.
All in favor?
Yay.
Carried. Be it resolved that council approve variance number VA 2025-002, subject to a lot grading permit and MSTW building permit. Mover,
Don?
second.
Marvin,
Thank you very much. Any additional thoughts or comments? All in favor?
yay.
Carried. That will take us to public hearing for conditional use number CU 2024-014.
I
and
can bring-
variance
I can bring,
number
okay, sorry.
VA 2025-003 at 156 North Railway.
I'll go bring Peter in. I also do not have a conflict here, but I will step out on a perceived.
Okay. I'd like the minutes to show that Andrew stepped out for this hearing. Do we have a mover? Again, why am I so quick today? I apologize, Jody. I will turn it back to you.
And
I'll
I'll
let
wait
you
for
do your
Councillor
thing.
Fraze to return.
Thank
Peter
you.
Fraze.
You would think I had a football game to go watch or something,
That's all done, I think.
but there isn't any. We'll let the minutes show that Councillor Fraze rejoined the council meeting.
And Counselor Fraze left.
Councillor Fraze left.
That could get confusing.
Wow. Jody, it's all yours.
This is a combined public hearing for conditional use CU 2024-014, and then also for the variance application VA 2025-003. Applicant is Richard Dick, Lux Inc., and on behalf of owners 2117983 Manitoba Limited for both of these applications at 156 North Railway. And the conditional use here is in order to construct a second principal use building on site. And that is a conditional use in the commercial zone. And then the variance is for, in order to reduce the required front yard north setback from 20 feet to 14.5 feet. And the purpose there is to, in order to construct a drive-through establishment on that lot. You have a report to council that I'll do a little bit of highlighting for you.
If you would, please.
Before I go on with that, I will say that and staff, correct me if I'm wrong, there's been no formal objections to this these applications. Okay. then I'll proceed. So in the report to council, you'll see in terms of general, the development plan complies there, the zoning is in compliance. Sorry. Again, you see the information on the conditional use for a second principal use building and the variance. On this same lot, there are some previous variances, or there's one previous variance that's listed there just for context. That was done last fall for a driveway. Moving on to drainage, this would require the approval of an engineered grading and stormwater management plan. And our city staff have been working together with the applicant and owner on that drainage plan. So there were some initial concerns, but I think those are in the process of being addressed, so I think that's good for now. There is a lengthier section there in regards to public safety and traffic impacts. And at the time of writing this report, the recommendation from staff was to have council make a decision on the requirement of a traffic impact study. However, since that time, a MTI, the Province Manitoba Transportation and Infrastructure, has required a traffic impact study. That's been communicated to the applicant and owner, and I believe they've done some work to get that underway. A couple of notes there under walkways. There's also, based on the previous variance, already some requirements there for a walkway. Now that variance may or may not be acted on. It hasn't been acted on yet. So that would be up to the owner and applicants to decide if they carry through on that. As far as access, pretty much everything there you see is green dots indicating there's no issues there, other than one just mentioning the previous variance, which hasn't been acted on.
Okay.
In terms of parking, there's just a minor note there about the parking stalls on the south side of the building being shown in that drawing as 19 feet by 9, which doesn't comply with our regulations. However, the designated officer can approve alternatives, and we're suggesting an alternative which is used in the city of Winnipeg, which allows a combination of length and width that would add up to 28 feet. So in this case, they could, let's say, go with an 18-foot long stall, but widen it to 10 feet. And we believe that they would have room to do that. It would mean a slight reduction in number of stalls, but that would still comply with our zoning bylaw. So just a little bit of note on that. Other than that, not a lot more maybe to highlight. At the end, you'll see the recommendation to move forward with a number of conditions that we've listed that would be up to council to determine which of those conditions you want written into the resolution. As an example, again, when we did this report, the traffic impact study was listed, but we've removed that because that's now a requirement of the province, so that's not something that you guys have to decide on. Open
Thank
to
you,
any
Jody.
questions if you have throughout.
Before we reach out to the proponent, do we have any questions of Jody? I will let Michael know you're welcome to stay for the rest of our meeting here. It's not a requirement, but you are welcome to stay. Excellent. On that note then, we'll see if there's anybody here who would like to speak to this development. All
Right, Richard Dick, Lux Inc., applicant. So, yeah, it's a lot shorter report than the last council we were at. It's appreciated. And a lot of green dots on here, it's also looks good. Yeah, it's, the main thing would be if we could, work through the conditions that, planning had put on with council, that we could work through negotiating who pays and how much pays for what.
Okay.
That would be,
Specifically, you're looking at conditions 2 and 3, is that?
2, 3, yeah, those would be the main two.
Okay.
Because the traffic impact study's been, we've requested vote on that, so. Which, again, we don't see, our side, we don't see a benefit to it because what are we trying to achieve with it? So, other than a cost.
And I think as staff, when they looked at some of the safety concerns, and we'll go down that rabbit trail for just a second, the suggestion was because of your potential client and the fact that traffic will be created, there was a recommendation that we consider it. But staff did suggest it was ultimately, in this situation, council's decision, and they were going to send it up to this table. Luckily for both you and I, we don't have to debate that, and the decision has been removed from us. But it is, when we look at a significant change in a pattern, we do want to see how we're going to mitigate that and what potentially we should see so that we can look around as many corners as possible.
And I guess number 5, the fencing requirement, there are no fences on any properties, like chain link fences from the rail to the property. We can see the safety, but it would stand alone and look kind of odd. But that would be another one that would just be kind of like it's not not required by CP, it's only a required recommendation. So
Right.
it can be decided planning and council if
Okay.
it's a requirement. One thing on the driveway that would be for the 348-foot driveway that we had approval from. I was wondering if that would be a separate development agreement from this one, if that's a possibility, as that is a separate,
I think that's right and could be a separate.
instead of tying them together, kind of one kind of hinges on the other one now.
Yeah, like I think the way staff have viewed this one is separate from that. We mostly just referred to that for context purposes. So we would consider this separate, and realizing that you would have the ability to not act on that variance. That's why we also are suggesting to council to consider the sidewalk. And, you know, where we stand right now is that the sidewalk construction requirement the condition there should really be according to the outcome of the traffic impact study. So I think as staff would say, you know, we're not asking for a hard condition from council today. We would be suggesting or recommending to council that the condition for sidewalk construction be in accordance with the results of the traffic impact study.
Okay.
Also, sidewalk, and I'm gonna get staff to correct me if I'm wrong, that cost would be typically a cost share of 50% developer and 50% taxpayer funding, right? I'll get Stephanie Jansen's here. She's
Thank
our
you.
planning and permitting manager, so.
So in this context, there's no sidewalk at all on North Railway. Potentially, you know, the city could front 50% of the north neighbors today. And then if and when the property to the north is redeveloped, we could, through development fees, recover the city's investment for that half of the sidewalk.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
we would essentially have to front the other 50%.
Until
Yeah.
redevelopment was to occur.
That's right.
Okay, appreciate that. That's a good context, good information. for us to have. Richard?
And then from staff's recommendation on the, like the other point Richard was referring to is number 3, and that's the drainage and the covering of the ditch. Their staff's recommendation is for the developer to cover those costs. And I think that's what Richard is saying, is he would like to see that as a negotiation item.
Because existing ditches right now on, half on private property and half on city. And our drainage plan, we contain 100% of our drainage, our water, stormwater, into our own, so we wouldn't contribute 0% to that drainage. Everything comes from the north properties and the road, drains into that drainage. So we don't have any contribution in stormwater going into there, so we feel shouldn't be 100% on us to cover the other properties' drainage.
Yeah, that's understood, and it's true that the on-site stormwater management is, everything on-site that happens there, they have an alternate plan for the drainage of that. However, there's also encroachment reasons that, I think, if you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason that you'd like to see it closed in is that you'd like to use some of that space. Like right now, essentially you can't use all of your property because there's a long-standing drain that takes up some of it. And you're wanting to use that part of your property for whatever it might be, parking or whatever
So
else.
it'd be part of the drive-through.
Right, but I'm just
On
thinking of the rest of the lot, like, and that's a thing to remember too with all of this is right now, we're talking about an application that is on one lot. That's why it is a conditional use for a second principal building, because this lot goes from Highway 32 essentially to Main Street, so.
And it's only 100 feet wide, so we're limited to width. That's why the parking stalls are
Yeah,
Are
shorter.
tough to do, and
Yeah, everything is compressed.
do we have any historical context in terms of how situations like this are treated? Jody, surely we've run into this before in the city of Winkler when we're looking at historical drains and then redevelopment of property.
I don't want to misspeak, so I'll ask someone that has maybe more context. I don't know, Tim, if you're able to, or Stephanie, if you're able to address that question.
Yeah, Tim Weebeer, Engineering Services Manager. Yeah, to speak to that, Henry, because of the age of the property and when it was developed originally, I mean, we have, especially in the old areas of community, we do have drains that do share boundaries with other properties. In the past, we have had situations, a co-op at home would be an example. The ditch ran in the front of their property line, and in that scenario, the developer, which was co-op, Federated Co-op, they paid for all the improvements and ditch filling and the drainage.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, they're also parking on that property, and we're not, like for this park, we're not parking on that property.
Right.
We'd be using just our property.
Yeah, there's no encroachment there. That's public parking in the front there.
But there is some, when there is encroachment, then we actually do charge people for that as well, like we have an encroachment bylaw, and then they're required to compensate the city for that encroachment, which wouldn't apply here as long as you don't have any encroachment.
Okay. I think that makes some sense.
Yeah, so if we do the traffic study, then we would still like to be able to start construction before the traffic study is done, because of, it takes months to get a study done, and with it being put on us, well, literally on Monday, that it was gonna be required. We have timelines, we have LOI for the property already, so, and deadlines that we would have to meet.
How does that normally work? I think we would be able to give some flexibility if it was our request. Are we able to give flexibility on a provincial request?
That's not our authority, like,
Okay.
The
So
permits
it's
that
not
are-
our decision.
It isn't.
Okay.
The permits that are required from the province would determine whether they want the traffic impact study done in parallel or that they want it done prior to approval. They've indicated on this one that they want it done prior to approval and prior to construction. So that would be, I think, up to you to find out from the province if that could be changed.
And that communication with regard,
Excuse me.
bless you, the requirement for the study, is that to the city of Winkler, or is that to the developer, or where does that come?
That is to the developer. The developer applied directly to the province.
Okay.
And so that requirement is from the province to the applicant.
So they've communicated that to you as well?
We
Or-
received the,
They indicated it to us, and I don't know if they generally contact the applicant directly. They should, right? But we have the early indication they haven't, it sounds like they haven't reached out to the applicant at all yet.
Okay. And I would suggest from our point of view, where it is us to approve, to do concurrently. I don't know that we would have any concern in that regard. Council can correct me if I'm off base. But ultimately, if it's their requirement, we can't make rules for them. But if we've seen some of that, and we're certainly, I would suspect, able to share that communication with the developer, and that they could then reach out and see how we can move this at the provincial level as well. It is our desire to see this thing built, and certainly the more quickly we can have our developments move forward, the more likely it is that we're able to also be able to do it in this year's construction costs and have all those things make sense. But where we don't have an authority to speak for the province, I don't think we could.
like, our application was put into this on December 27th, I think it is,
Okay.
so,
To the province,
to the province.
yeah.
Wow, that's a fairly fast turnaround on
No, that's not,
province.
that was our application. I don't know when your application.
See, this got, your
Circulating.
application to us, I think, was right around December 17th.
But your,
And then,
your circulation through MTI,
right, we sent it
That's-
through MTI and they were a little delayed on getting their comments to us. And I think we only got the official comments last week, is that right, Steph? Yeah, and then as soon as they communicated to us that they were going to require that, we passed it on, and so, yeah, it's kind of like two different application processes. They informed Winkler as a commenter on the application that we deal with. I suppose they haven't carried through, it sounds like they haven't carried through on letting the applicant know.
I would suspect that for us to communicate to the province that we're okay concurrently, ultimately their decision, but for us to say from our point of view, we would be okay having that concurrent,
We can pass that along.
I think that would make some sense. Okay. Council, any questions or thoughts? A couple of things that, particularly that were brought up by Richard, items 2, 3, and 5. Number 2, we've already had a favorable comment that it makes some sense for us to front the second half of the sidewalk and look at the other side for collection when that's developed. Some concern about the construction requirement and the cost allocation of closing that ditch. And then the last one being the fencing requirement. And knowing again who we're looking at and where we are, I don't believe that that's an onerous requirement. It will initially, when just this end is developed, likely seem out of place, but I would think as the rest of the property is developed, in all likelihood, there may make some sense to do some further pieces. I don't know, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, I do think that one will likely be spelled out in the traffic impact study.
And
So
because
that-
it's gonna be mostly commercial, quite possibly,
yeah, it would be commercial.
you
no
wouldn't
residential.
want people coming across the tracks to access the
Like by-
businesses. You'd wanna have them come down the walkways the proper ways, right?
Like 15th Street is where there's the multifamily by Grandeur Street there. Like, there's a lot of multifamily on the south side, there's no fencing there, and
There's likely young people there as well,
Young
is what you're
people there, yeah.
suggesting. That's a good
Well,
point.
I'm just surprised the fencing came up, because there's no fencing, even look at the golf course, like, we're golfing right along the train track there.
that's why it was only a recommendation from CP, not a requirement.
Okay, because to me, we live up against the railway track, and there's no fencing there, or lots of no fence, and I'm just looking at the other side. There's no fencing on South Railway, is there?
No.
Not that I can see, no.
Yeah. So I don't know, I wouldn't have an issue with no fence, but that's speaker's opinion only.
We'll have lots of opportunity to debate that further and discuss it. Richard, thank you for your comments initially. We may well come back to you. I'll give anybody else an opportunity that would like to speak either for or against this.
Good evening, Marlon Cool, Southern Potato. I am a neighbor across the road. We're concerned about the traffic at North Railway and Highway 32. It's somewhat improved since it's been 4-lane, but it's still a very challenging intersection. And I guess I'm pleased to hear that the province is asking for an impact study. In my discussions with city staff before the meeting today, I was informed that that was going to be a recommendation. And I guess my encouragement to council would be to seriously consider that before approving this. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that comment. And again, initially, staff were recommending that we do it. At this point in time, that has been taken out of our hands, and that study will happen. Thank you.
Just have
Richard?
one comment on the traffic impact study that, I don't know if Southern is aware that one option, if the traffic impact study does require some changes to the intersection, it could be closing off the median, and which would impact Southern Potato and McMahon and Yates more than it would impact us, really.
Right. Thank you for that note as well. Anybody else here who wishes to speak to this? Council, any questions of either proponent or somebody else as a commenter?
I'm glad that the staff is willing to negotiate some of these things with the developer and come to a reasonable and fair conclusion to this. I'm glad that that piece of property is being developed. I think it's just, how do we get there, right?
Okay. Nothing further. Are we prepared to close the hearing and then debate the decision? Any final thoughts before we close the hearing from Lux? Be it resolved that the public hearing for conditional use application number CU 2024-014 and variance application number VA 2025-003 be closed. Mover.
Peter?
Second.
Michael?
All in favor?
Okay.
Carried. The next piece then, we're at the approval piece, which would take us now to, we do those one at a time. Be it resolved that council approve conditional use number CU 2024-014, subject to a development agreement, terms and conditions to be in accordance with the recommendations in the report to council, including but not limited to the following 4 terms. 1, sidewalk construction requirement in accordance with the traffic impact study recommendations. LDS construction and boulevard restoration, development permit approval, and fencing adjacent to the rail. Mover.
Michael?
Second.
Peter?
Marvin got that one, Peter. He snuck it in underneath.
I waited.
So we have the 4 pieces there. Members of council have already spoken, or we've already had a suggestion that it makes some sense for the city to front half the construction of the sidewalk. And we've had a couple of councilors with a suggestion with regard to the fencing. how do we want to look at, let's do that first one first, the fencing adjacent to the rail. Do we believe it should stay?
I think the traffic impact study might show that it's needed simply because it's gonna be commercial and they don't want people coming across the tracks to access the commercial side of it. That's
Well,
why I
then we
think,
can just leave it as that too, if it's required by the traffic impact study.
So add that same piece that we have on number 1 there as well, in accordance with the traffic impact study recommendations.
Yeah, they say you have to have it, then
Okay.
perfect, then you have to have it, but if not, you know, you look at along that whole rail line, you know, to me, chain link fence is just a garbage collector. You know, on windy days.
I think that makes some sense. We have 2 counselors who've spoken to that already. Marvin, are you good if we add that same condition to number 4, that it's a requirement if the traffic impact study says so?
Yes, I am. I think one of the reasons, and I think Councilor Chris, in addition to that, is the fact that this is a retail establishment. People might quickly just run across or take a shortcut, run across. So, but I think the MTI's study will indicate whether they think it's important or not.
Michael?
Yeah, would agree with that. I think the impact study will indicate if it's important. Otherwise, as it's been said, it's nowhere else along there, and I can see.
I was a fan of the fencing out of the gate, and it made a whole bunch of sense. But the proponent made a very good comment. We have a fairly intense housing development with lots of young kids right there without it. That it should be something to be considered. And to Councillor Friesen's point of view, we actually pay encroachment access to CP Rail for our cart paths and on our golf course. So for that reason, I think I'm okay with making the fencing only a requirement if the traffic impact study says so. When we look at the rest,
Hang on 1 second.
not yet.
I guess,
Yes.
sorry, that's loud. We may need to ensure that the traffic impact study looks at that aspect of the development. Normally, it looks at pedestrian, and traffic movements generated by the development on public road and sidewalk infrastructure, but not necessarily generated within the site. It may just need to be added in the terms of reference.
To the scope.
To the scope, yeah.
Is that leading them to say, we want one there?
The rail doesn't even say that you have to have it. It's a recommendation, but that's it. You think they're the ones who would be concerned.
I think I agree with Don on that one. I wonder if we add that into a scope, if that's an invitation for them to say yes. If it comes up, if it's there, it makes some sense. Unfortunately, the hearing is now closed. The question from one of the proponents was a request to make a comment, and I wish we could, John. Unfortunately, the hearing has now been closed, and we're at the debate to try to make a decision.
My thoughts are, let's not open up a can of worms. Like I say, it's a rail line's recommendation. If they say they recommend it but don't enforce it, why bring it up with traffic impact study yet?
There's an excellent point from Stephanie that if it's not to be looked at, they may not bring it up. But ultimately, they're going to look at, I suspect, all of it. And I agree that we leave it in there conditional to the traffic impact study telling us that it needs to be there. But I don't know that we need to invite that to be there.
and the MTI might go to the rail line and ask them for some input in this whole thing, and that recommendation might come from the rail line anyway.
Either way, that part would be
That's
above our
be-
pay
That's
grade.
beyond our control.
Yep. So with those changes, are we ready for the question, or do we have more comment or debate?
How about the construction and the boulevard restoration, like,
Yeah,
the filling in the ditch there?
I think historically, that has been on developer improvement. My thought is that we leave it there, but I'm open to discussion from council.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it's what we're saying here on the condition, so.
Correct.
Are you suggesting, Don, that we clarify the wording on condition?
Well, I'm just wondering, right now, it's not stating who's paying.
I think that was one of the questions that was brought up as to negotiation stuff.
And which is fine.
Which
you
is
know,
fine, but
it's
I think
just,
you're saying you want some input as to where the negotiation should go.
Well, I'm just thinking is, if we do the sidewalk, obviously, the north side's gonna get developed too. Do we look at it as, it'd be great to close off that ditch, and if the north side at one time gets developed, do we, are they, obviously, they'll want that, depending when it gets developed to, they might want that ditch closed off too, I'm just thinking for the future later on.
Jody, is there some thought in that? Does that work to also do?
Again, I would ask Stephanie to comment on if that would be an option to build that into a development agreement similar to the sidewalk.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So the
to be
question
honest.
would be, like, with the sidewalk construction, 50% to be paid by developer, 50% fronted by the city, but to be added to future development north side of North Railway. Could the same approach be taken with the LDS and the boulevard restoration?
I suppose it could, although I would probably defer to engineering services. I don't know if the benefit is equal to both parties in the same way a sidewalk is.
That's true.
Like the boulevard
Okay,
and the,
okay.
Sorry, just to comment, on the north side, if there was redevelopment, there would likely be recaptured boulevard potentially on that side, which is currently paved.
Okay, so there would be some cost to that developer on the other
So
side
it does
already.
make it a little bit tricky, trying to evaluate both sides.
Okay, no, good point.
No, then we can leave it the way it is for my part.
Yep.
Final comments. We haven't adjusted our motion per se, but I think staff
if you
clearly.
refresh, I think it will,
Oh, I love it when we can do that.
Okay.
On a paper copy, you can't refresh.
no, that's true. So what I've done so far is, we've added in accordance with the traffic impact study recommendations on number 1 and number 4. For the clarity of the resolution, you may want to clarify on number 2, if you're intending to vote that it be at the developer's cost, then we should probably put that in. Otherwise,
Otherwise
we'll
we're
have
guessing.
some ambiguity about that. That is up to you.
Council?
I would leave it at developer cost.
I would agree if that's, on that one, if that's staff recommendation, that's the way I would lean.
Okay. Last final comments from anybody else at council? You see that resolution there? Is everyone clear with it? Are you prepared to vote? I'll take the silence to mean yes. All those in favor?
Yay.
Yay.
That is unanimously carried. That takes us to the variance. Be it resolved that council approve variance number VA 2025-003. Mover.
Michael?
Marvin?
Second Marvin, thank you. You were very quick that time. Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Yay.
Don?
Yay, I did, sorry.
Thank you. You were in unison then with Marvin. Thank you. That is carried. Let's invite Councillor Andrew Fraze back to the meeting if we could, to Tim or David.
David's gonna go.
While we wait for him, be it resolved that public hearings be adjourned and regular council reconvene. Mover.
Peter?
Second.
Marvin?
Oh, there you go.
All in favor?
Yay.
Yay.
Carried. We'll show that Councillor Andrew Fraze rejoined the meeting just in time for questions from the media or public relevant to this meeting of council. Mover. Not seeing any. We'll move to adjournment. Be it resolved that this regular meeting of council be adjourned. Mover.
Sure.
I'll
Andrew.
go. I'll help him
Peter
out.
got the second. All in favor?
Yay.
Yay.
Carried. Marvin and Don, thank you very much both for joining in, and the fact that you both found good enough internet to participate all the way through. Appreciate it. Thank you to staff for helping facilitate council being all over the world, yet still at council meeting. Have a good evening.